I never thought I'd be competing with a ghost. That's what Derek became. This omnipresent specter haunting every corner of my relationship with Jessica. Not literally dead, just everywhere. In her memories, in her expectations, in her constant, subtle comparisons that slowly chipped away at what I thought was solid ground beneath us. I'm Mike Sullivan, 34, building engineer. I design structures that last for generations. My work requires precision, planning, and patience, qualities I've always been proud of, until Jessica made me question if they were actually flaws. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue 2 years ago. I noticed her immediately, not just because she was gorgeous with her chestnut hair and green eyes that crinkled when she laughed, but because she was telling a story about a marketing campaign gone wrong with such animation and humor that everyone around her was in stitches. Jessica had a way of commanding attention without seeming to try. I remember standing by the grill, nursing a beer and watching her from across the yard. Our host Brian caught me staring and grinned. "That's Jessica Miller," he said, marketing genius. "Single for about 8 months now." "Not subtle, Brian," I replied, but I couldn't help smiling. "Just giving you relevant data," he shrugged. "As an engineer, I thought you'd appreciate thoroughness." Later, when Jessica was alone refilling her drink, I approached. My opening line was terrible, something about the structural integrity of the wobbly table holding the cooler, but she laughed anyway. We ended up talking until the party died down, standing under the string lights long after most guests had left. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early, nervously adjusting my collar in the reflection of my phone. Jessica arrived exactly on time, wearing a green dress that matched her eyes, and suddenly my nerves evaporated. Conversation flowed easily between us, jumping from work stories to childhood memories to passionate debates about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, obviously, but Jessica disagreed vehemently. After dating for a year, things were going well. So well that when I found a charming craftsman-style house at a good price, needing work but with good bones, as they say, I took the plunge. It needed renovations, but that was my wheelhouse. I could see past the peeling paint and outdated kitchen to what it could become. "It's perfect," Jessica said when I first showed it to her, her eyes wide as she spun around in the spacious living room. "I can already picture us here." That "us" felt significant. We hadn't formally discussed moving in together, but when I signed the papers, it seemed natural to ask her, "Want to share this project with me? And the next 50 years or so?" I'd asked, trying to sound casual while my heart hammered in my chest. Her kiss was answer enough. The first few weeks were a honeymoon phase. We spent evenings planning renovations, drinking wine on a blanket on the bare living room floor, imagining our future in vivid detail. Jessica had an eye for design I lacked, and I appreciated her vision for the space. "The kitchen should open to the dining room," she'd say, sweeping her hand across the wall, "and these windows could be bigger to let in more light." I nodded, making mental notes. "We'll need to check if that's a load-bearing wall first, but I like the concept." One Saturday, we drove to a salvage yard outside of town to look for unique pieces we might incorporate. Jessica was like a kid in a candy store, darting from vintage doorknobs to antique light fixtures, gasping at the discovery of an ornate clawfoot tub hidden behind stacks of old windows. "Can you imagine this in our bathroom?" she asked, running her hand along the tub's curved edge. I examined it critically. "It's beautiful, but we'd need to reglaze it, check all the plumbing connections, reinforce the floor to handle the weight." "Sometimes you think too much," she laughed, kissing my cheek. "That's what I love about you, though. You keep my wild ideas grounded." It was one of those perfect days. We left with the tub strapped precariously to my truck bed, along with a pair of stained glass windows Jessica couldn't resist. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found someone who balanced me so well, her creativity complementing my practicality. Everything changed the day I spread my blueprints across our makeshift dining table, a door laid across 2 sawhorses. I'd spent weeks measuring, calculating, and drafting plans for each phase of renovation, starting with the structural necessities: foundation repair, plumbing, electrical, roof. "We need to tackle the essential systems before aesthetics," I explained, showing her the timeline I'd created. I know it's not the exciting stuff, but doing it right will save us headaches later. Jessica studied the plans with a slight frown, then sighed heavily. Something wrong? I asked. No, it's just... She hesitated. Derek would have already torn down that wall by now. Derek, her ex-boyfriend. I'd heard his name a few times before, usually in passing references. I knew they dated for 3 years before breaking up about 8 months before we met. Beyond that, I didn't know him much, and honestly, I hadn't wanted to. Derek? I tried to keep my tone neutral. My ex, she clarified unnecessarily. He was very hands-on. He just had this amazing instinct for spaces. He wouldn't spend weeks planning. He'd just grab his tools and start creating. I folded my blueprints carefully. Well, I'm not Derek. I believe in planning before executing. I know, she said quickly, touching my arm. And that's good too. It's just different approaches, you know? Sometimes being spontaneous leads to amazing results. I nodded and changed the subject, but something had shifted. A comparison had been made, and it wouldn't be the last. Over the next several weeks, as I methodically tackled the foundation issues, Derek's ghost materialized with increasing frequency. When I was reinforcing the floor joists in the bathroom, Derek renovated our entire bathroom in a weekend once. He just had this vision. When I carefully replumbed the kitchen, Derek installed this incredible rainfall shower in our old place. He found these antique copper pipes at a salvage yard and repurposed them. When I updated the electrical panel and rewired the outdated knob and tube wiring, Derek always said most electricians overthink things. He did our entire apartment and never had a problem. Each comment stung more than the last, but I swallowed my irritation. Everyone has a past, I told myself. It doesn't mean anything. Then came the terrace project. The back of our house had a small, crumbling concrete patio that I planned to transform into a proper wooden deck, large enough for entertaining, with built-in seating and planters. I'd spent evenings drafting the plans, calculating load requirements, researching the best rot-resistant woods. One night I was showing Jessica the final design, feeling proud of the elegant but sturdy structure I'd created. See here? The pergola will provide partial shade but still let light through, and these built-in planters will give us privacy from the neighbors without feeling closed in. Jessica looked at the plans and tilted her head. It's nice, she said in a tone that clearly communicated the opposite, but it seems so rigid, so formal. It's designed to last, I replied. The footings will be deep enough to prevent frost heave, and the cire will resist decay for decades. She picked up her phone. Let me show you something. After scrolling for a moment, she turned the screen toward me. This was the deck Derek built at our old place. The photo showed a bohemian-looking space with mismatched woods, string lights, and an eclectic assortment of furnishings. It looked like something from a quirky coffee shop, charming in its way, but nothing like the classic, timeless design I'd planned. He built it in a weekend with salvaged materials, Jessica continued. It was so creative. Everyone who visited fell in love with it. I stared at the image, noting the uneven boards, the questionable structural supports, the lack of proper flashing where the deck met the house, a recipe for water, damage, and rot. It has character, I said diplomatically. Exactly. Jessica's eyes lit up. That's what I'm talking about. Character, personality. Maybe you could try to be a little more spontaneous with this deck, like less measuring and more feeling the space. I closed my laptop. I'll think about it, I said, though I had no intention of changing my plans. I build things to last. That's who I am. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jessica's words echoed in my mind, along with all the previous references to Derek's handiwork. Around 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went to my home office, where I pulled up her Instagram account. I'd never done this before. It felt invasive somehow, but I needed to understand what I was up against. I scrolled back through her posts until I reached the period before we met. There he was, Derek, dark-haired and scruffy, with tattoo sleeves and that carefully cultivated 3-day stubble. In most photos, he was in the middle of some project, building a bookshelf, painting a mural, constructing what looked like a homemade pizza oven on their apartment balcony. Definitely against code. The captions were what really got me. My amazing man building us a new coffee table from reclaimed barnwood. Creative hands, hashtag lucky girl. And when your boyfriend turned a pile of junk into the coolest bar cart ever, had upcycling hashtag talented AF. I closed the browser, feeling a strange mix of inadequacy and irritation. Derek looked exactly how I'd imagined him. The artistic, spontaneous type who'd dive into projects with passion, but probably leave half of them unfinished. The opposite of me. The next morning, I headed to the lumberyard to order materials for the deck. The owner, Bill, had become something of a friend during my frequent visits. "The cedar you wanted just came in," he said as I entered. "Beautiful stuff." "Actually," I heard myself say, "I'm thinking of going with IP instead." Bill raised his eyebrows. "Brazilian hardwood? That's top of the line, and about twice the price of cedar." "It'll last twice as long too," I replied. "Maybe longer with proper maintenance." Something had shifted in me overnight. If Jessica wanted to compare me to Derek, I'd give her something to compare, not by mimicking his spontaneous, cobbled-together approach, but by elevating my own strengths. Precision, quality, longevity. I revised my deck plans that evening, incorporating the IP wood, stainless steel hardware, and hidden fastening systems that would create a flawless surface. I didn't show Jessica the updates. I wanted to surprise her, and maybe myself too. The following weekend, I was laying out the foundation for the deck when Jessica's friend Amber stopped by unexpectedly. "Jessica's not here," I explained, straightening up from marking the post locations. "She's at a marketing conference in Chicago until Sunday." "I know," Amber said with a conspiratorial smile. "I came to see you, actually. Jessica mentioned you're rebuilding the deck, and I wanted to talk to you about our backyard. My husband and I are thinking of doing something similar." I showed her my plans, explaining the features and materials. Amber seemed genuinely impressed. "This is incredible," she said, studying the drawings. "So much more sophisticated than what Derek used to do." I tried to keep my expression neutral. "You knew Derek?" "Oh, sure. I've been friends with Jessica since college. I knew both of you guys." She must have noticed something in my face because she added quickly, "Not that there's any comparison. Derek was all flash, no substance. His projects looked cool on Instagram, but fell apart in months. Jessica was constantly complaining about fixing things he'd created." This was news to me. "Really? She seems to remember his work quite fondly." Amber snorted. "That's selective memory for you, oh? You should have heard her when they were together. That deck she's probably shown you pictures of? It leaked into the apartment below after the first rain. The landlord nearly evicted them." I absorbed this information, feeling both vindicated and confused. "She never mentioned that part." "Of course not," Amber said with a shrug. "No one posts their ex's failures on social media, right? Just the highlight reel." She glanced at her watch. "I should get going. But seriously, Mike, your work is incredible. Jessica knows it too, even if she's being weird about it." After Amber left, I sat on the half-marked lawn, turning our conversation over in my mind. Why would Jessica idolize Derek's shoddy craftsmanship when she apparently complained about it when they were together? What was I missing? As spring turned to summer, I focused on the interior renovations. Each time Jessica mentioned Derek's handiwork, I responded by elevating my own work. When she reminisced about the charming open shelving Derek had installed in their old apartment, which from the photo she showed me appeared to be repurposed scaffolding planks mounted with visible brackets, I designed and built custom cabinetry with dovetailed joints and hidden hinges. When she mentioned how Derek had painted their bedroom a vibrant teal that somehow made the space feel larger, I researched color theory, hired a color consultant, and selected a sophisticated palette that enhanced the architectural features of each room while creating a cohesive flow throughout the house. It became a silent competition, one Derek wasn't even aware he was participating in. Jessica continued to reference him, seemingly oblivious to how each comparison pushed me to elevate my work while simultaneously eroding my patience. One evening in June, Jessica's parents came for dinner. It was their first time seeing the house since we'd begun renovations, and I was eager to show off our progress. Her father, Robert, was particularly impressed with the built-in bookshelves I'd constructed in the living room. "These are professional quality," he said, running his hand along the trim. You do this kind of work for a living? No, I'm a structural engineer, I explained. This is just a hobby. Some hobby? He chuckled. You're putting my retirement woodworking to shame. Jessica's mother, Diane, was examining the newly renovated kitchen. Jessica, honey, this is gorgeous. So much more practical than that quirky setup you had with... She caught herself and glanced at me. In your last place. An awkward silence fell. Jessica busied herself with serving more wine. It's okay, I said, forcing a smile. You can say his name. Derek isn't Voldemort. Robert laughed too loudly. Well, I, for one, am glad Jessica found someone who knows how to use a level. That last boyfriend of hers, sorry, Jessica, but that guy was all talk. Remember that table he made you, Jess? The one that collapsed when you put a dinner plate on it? Dad, Jessica warned, her cheeks flushing. What? I'm complimenting Mike, night and day if you ask me. Later, after her parents had gone, Jessica was unusually quiet as we cleaned up. Your dad seems to prefer my work to Derek's, I observed, unable to resist. She slammed a cabinet door harder than necessary. Can we not do this right now? Do what? I'm just making conversation. You know what? She snapped. The whole your ex was terrible thing. It's getting old, Don. I set down the dish I was drying. That's rich, coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? It means you bring up Derek and his amazing creations every chance you get. But when someone suggests he might not have been God's gift to DIY, you get defensive. I don't get defensive, she protested. And I don't bring him up that often. Jessica, you mentioned him 3 times today alone. The porch swing? Derek made one just like this. The backsplash? Derek would have used recycled glass tiles. The light fixture? Derek rewired one from an antique find. She crossed her arms. So I have memories. Sue me. It's not about having memories. It's about constantly measuring me against them. And apparently selective memories at that. What does that mean? I debated whether to mention my conversation with Amber, then decided I had nothing to lose. Amber told me Derek's famous deck leaked into the downstairs apartment, that his projects were always falling apart, that you used to complain about having to fix things he built. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, embarrassment, anger. Amber should mind her own business, she finally said. So it's true? Oh? She sighed, leaning against the counter. Yes, okay. Some of his projects weren't exactly durable, but they had soul, Mike. They were unique. Interesting. And my work isn't? The question came out more vulnerable than I'd intended. That's not what I meant, she backpedaled. Your work is beautiful. Perfect, even. Sometimes I just miss the spontaneity, the creativity, the constant repairs, I suggested dryly. She didn't laugh. You know what? I'm tired. Let's just finish cleaning up and go to bed. We worked in silence, the tension between us thick enough to cut. As we turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I wondered if we were fixating on home renovations to avoid confronting the cracks in our own foundation. The breaking point came unexpectedly on a Tuesday evening in July. I was installing crown molding in the dining room, carefully measuring and cutting precise angles when Jessica returned from work. Wow, that looks amazing, she said, genuinely impressed. The detail really adds elegance to the room. I smiled, pleased by her appreciation. Thanks, I thought it would complement the architectural style of the house. She nodded, then added, Derek would have loved this. He always appreciated craftsmanship, even though his own style was more improvised. I set down my nail gun carefully, counting to 10 in my head. Jessica, I said evenly, do you realize how often you mention Derek? She looked startled. What? I don't mention him that often. You do, almost every day. Every project I complete, every decision I bomb, somehow Derek becomes part of the conversation. That's not true, she protested, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. Yesterday, when I installed the new bathroom fixtures, you told me about how Derek repurposed an antique dresser as a vanity. Last week, when I painted the hallway, you mentioned how Derek used some special technique with glaze. 3 days ago, Okay, she interrupted. Maybe I do reference him occasionally, But it's not like I'm comparing you unfavorably. They're just memories. They don't feel like just memories, I said quietly. They feel like benchmarks I'm failing to meet. Jessica's expression softened. She crossed the room and put her hands on my shoulders. Mike, that's ridiculous. You're nothing like Derek, and that's a good thing. He was creative but unreliable. You're solid, dependable. Somehow this didn't feel like the compliment she intended it to be. If I'm so different from Derek, I asked, why do you keep measuring me against him? She withdrew her hands. I'm not measuring you against anyone. I'm just sharing stories from my past. Stories that always seem to highlight what I'm not. That's not fair, Jessica said, her voice rising. You're being oversensitive. Am I? How would you feel if I constantly brought up my ex? My ex was so organized. My ex was such a great cook. My ex would have arranged the furniture differently. That's completely different, she insisted. How? How is it different? Because, she struggled for words, because I'm not saying Derek was better than you. Aren't you? I challenged. Every time I do something carefully, methodically, you mention how Derek would have done it faster, more creatively, with more soul. What am I supposed to take from that? You're twisting my words, she said, her eyes filling with tears. I never said he was better than you. I returned to my work, carefully lining up the next piece of molding. Maybe not explicitly, but the implication is clear. There is no implication. You're creating problems where there aren't any. I put down my tools again, my patience finally exhausted. Jessica, relationships are like buildings. They need solid foundations, proper maintenance, and honest assessment of structural problems. Right now, we have a serious issue with our foundation. Oh my God, she groaned, throwing up her hands. Not everything is a construction metaphor, Mike. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so rigid in how you see everything. And you're so unwilling to acknowledge how your behavior affects me, I countered. I'm telling you that your constant references to Derek make me feel inadequate, compared, second best. And instead of considering that, you're dismissing my feelings entirely. Fine, she said, grabbing her purse. If I'm such a terrible girlfriend, maybe I should go stay with Amber for a few days. Give us both some space to think. I hadn't expected this escalation, but I was too frustrated to backpedal. Maybe that's a good idea. She stared at me, clearly shocked that I hadn't protested. Fine, she repeated, her voice smaller. I'll pack a bag. I heard her moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing with more force than necessary. 20 minutes later, she came down with an overnight bag. I'll call you tomorrow, she said, pausing at the door. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After she left, the house felt eerily quiet. I tried to return to the crown molding, but my heart wasn't in it. Instead, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the back steps, looking out at the half-finished deck. Jessica's absence stretched from one night to 3. We exchanged a few brief texts, assurances that we were okay, just taking space. But nothing substantive. I threw myself into work, both at my job and on the house, often continuing well into the night. On the 4th day, I came home to find Jessica's car in the driveway. My stomach tightened as I walked up the front path, unsure what to expect. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. Hey, she said cautiously. Hey, I replied, setting down my bag. You're back. I am, if that's okay. I nodded. It's your home too. She put down the knife and turned to face me. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Me too, I admitted. I talked to Amber and my therapist. Jessica took a deep breath. You were right about Derek, about the comparisons. I didn't realize how often I was doing it or how it might make you feel. This was unexpected. I leaned against the counter, waiting for her to continue. I think I've been idealizing my relationship with Derek because of how it ended. He left so suddenly, without any real closure. One day we were planning the trip to Bali, and the next he was moving to Portland for some apprenticeship he'd applied for months earlier without telling me. I came home from work, and half our stuff was gone. I didn't know that, I said softly. I never really talked about it. It was humiliating. All our friends knew before I did. She wiped out a tear. I think part of me has been trying to maintain this narrative that what we had was so special, so creative, and passionate to justify how much it hurt when he left. Because if it wasn't special, then I was just another girl who got dumped, you know? Her vulnerability disarmed me. I moved closer, not quite touching her, but reducing the distance between us. I can understand that. But the truth is, she continued, our relationship was a mess. He was unreliable, impulsive, terrible with money. His projects were just like him, exciting at first glance, but lacking any real substance or staying power. She looked up at me. The complete opposite of you. And I think that's what attracted me to you initially. But then I got scared. Scared of what? Of how solid you are, how reliable. It's like, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to reveal some fatal flaw, or suddenly decide to leave. So maybe I've been testing you unconsciously by bringing up Derek, pushing to see if you'll snap. I considered this. And how did that work out? A small smile tugged at her lips. Well, you didn't snap, but you didn't just take it either. You stood your ground, set a boundary. She reached for my hand. I respect that, Mike, and I'm sorry for how I've been acting. I took her hand, intertwining our fingers. I'm sorry, too, for not bringing this up sooner, for letting it build until I exploded. So where do we go from here, she asked. It was a fair question. Where did we go? Part of me wanted to forgive everything immediately and move forward. Another part remained cautious, protective. How about we start with dinner, I suggested, and maybe a moratorium on mentioning exes for a while. Deal, she agreed. And Mike, for what it's worth, that crown molding is gorgeous, and entirely you. We spent that evening reconnecting, talking more honestly than we had in months. Jessica shared more about her relationship with Derek, the real version, not the Instagram highlight reel. I talked about my own insecurities, my fear of not being enough. But wounds don't heal overnight, and trust, once damaged, takes time to rebuild. Over the next few weeks, Jessica was careful not to mention Derek, but I could tell it was a conscious effort. Sometimes she'd start to reference something from her past, then abruptly change direction mid-sentence. It was progress, but it felt fragile. Meanwhile, I continued pouring myself into the renovations, channeling my energy into creating something beautiful and lasting. The deck became my magnum opus. I worked on it early mornings before my day job and late into the evenings. The IPE wood was challenging to work with, dense and difficult to cut, but the results were stunning. The rich chocolate brown planks seemed to glow with inner warmth in the sunlight. I installed subtle lighting along the steps and under the built-in seating. The pergola created geometric shadows that shifted throughout the day. When it was finally complete, even Jessica was speechless. Mike, she breathed, stepping onto it for the first time. This is incredible. It's like something from a magazine. Pride swelled in my chest. You like it? Like it? I love it. It's perfect. She walked the perimeter, running her hand along the smooth railing. I can't believe you built this yourself. For once, Derek's name didn't enter the conversation, and I allowed myself to hope we'd turned a corner. That hope was short-lived. The following weekend, we decided to host a housewarming party to showcase the renovations. Jessica invited friends, neighbors, and coworkers. I smoked brisket and ribs on my new built-in grill. We set up a bar on the deck, and the house filled with admiring guests. Your home is stunning, Jessica's coworker Melissa gushed. I can't believe how much work you've done. Mike is incredibly talented, Jessica said, linking her arm through mine. Then the fatal addition. I gave him some inspiration from my ex's projects, but he really took it to another level. The background chatter seemed to fade as I processed her words. After everything, all the comparisons, all the subtle criticisms, all my efforts to prove myself on my own terms, she was still crediting Derek for my work. I smiled tightly and excused myself to check on the food, mechanically turning ribs on the grill while my mind raced. It wasn't just about the deck or the renovations anymore. It was about us, about whether Jessica could ever see me clearly, without Derek's shadow falling across her vision. Throughout the evening, I played the role of gracious host while internally a decision crystallized. By the time the last guest departed around midnight, leaving us with a house full of empty glasses and plates of half-eaten food, I knew what I had to do. Jessica kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sofa with a contented sigh. That was fantastic. Everyone loved the house. I collected glasses from the coffee table. They did, I agreed. The renovations turned out well. That's an understatement, she laughed. You've created a masterpiece, Mike. I'm so lucky. I carried the glasses to the kitchen, rinsed them, and returned to the living room where Jessica was scrolling through her phone. Look at all these comments on my posts, she said. Everyone's raving about the before and after photos. I sat beside her, keeping a deliberate distance between us. Jessica, we need to talk. She looked up, her smile fading slightly at my serious tone. That sounds ominous. What's up? I've been thinking about us, about this house, about the future. I've been thinking about the future too, she said, brightening again. Now that the major renovations are done, maybe we should talk about next steps, personally. She gave me a meaningful look. I took a deep breath. I've accepted an offer on the house. Jessica stared at me, uncomprehending. What do you mean an offer? What offer? I listed the property last week. A couple viewed it on Thursday while you were at your conference. They made an offer significantly above asking price. She set her phone down slowly. You're joking. This is some kind of weird prank. It's not a prank. The paperwork is being processed. Well, we close in 30 days. You can't sell our house without discussing it with me. Her voice rose with indignation. We live here together. Technically, it's my house, I said quietly. My name is on the mortgage, the deed, the insurance. I've paid for all the renovations. Technically? She repeated, her face flushing. Is that how you see this? Some technicality? This is our home, Mike. We've been building it together. Have we? I asked. Because from where I stand, I've been building it while you've been comparing it, and me, to Derek's work. Oh my God, she groaned. Are you still on about that? I thought we'd moved past it. We never addressed it, I corrected her. We just stopped talking about it explicitly. But it's always there, Jessica. Every time you suggest I should be more creative or spontaneous, every time you mention how things could be more unique or personal, I hear Derek's name. That's ridiculous, Tia, she protested. I've been completely supportive of your work. I brag about you to everyone. You told Melissa tonight that you gave me some inspiration from your ex's projects. After everything I've poured into this house, my skills, my time, my money, my heart, you're still giving Derek credit. Jessica's expression shifted from anger to something closer to panic. It was just a casual comment. I didn't mean anything by it. But that's just it, I said, feeling strangely calm now that the words were finally coming out. You did mean something by it. In your mind, Derek is still the standard, the original. I'm just a copy trying to measure up. That's not true, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I love you, Mike. I love what you've created here. I believe you do, I said gently. But I also believe you're not over Derek. Not completely. And I can't keep living in his shadow, trying to prove myself against a memory. So you're just throwing away our relationship over some offhand comments about my ex? I shook my head. I'm recognizing that our foundation is unstable. Like this house when we bought it, the structure looked solid, but underneath there were cracks in the foundation. I can fix a house foundation. I'm not sure I can fix ours. You don't need to fix anything, she cried, tears now streaming down her face. We're good together, Mike, so I mentioned my ex a few times. Who doesn't talk about their past relationships occasionally? It's not the mentioning, I explained. It's the comparing, the subtle message that if only I were more like him, I'd somehow be better, more worthy. I never said that. You didn't have to. It was implied every time. Jessica wiped at her tears angrily. So that's it? You're selling our house and breaking up with me because of your own insecurities? The accusation stung, but I'd anticipated it. Maybe there is some insecurity involved, I admitted. But there's also self-respect. I deserve to be with someone who appreciates me for who I am, not who I'm not. I do appreciate you. Then why can't you let Derek go? I asked simply. The question hung in the air between us. Jessica opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. For once, she seemed to have no ready answer. I'll help you find a new place, I offered quietly, and I'll make sure you have time to move. I don't want a new place, she said, her voice small. I want our place, the one we've been building. So did I replied sadly, but we weren't building the same thing. I slept in the guest bedroom that night, lying awake for hours in the darkness, questioning my decision. Had I overreacted, thrown away something good because of wounded pride? But in the quiet hours before dawn, I recognized that it wasn't just about pride. It was about compatibility, respect, and the kind of partnership I wanted. One where both people were fully present, not living with ghosts. The next morning, Jessica was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she'd made coffee and was sitting at the island, looking strangely composed. I made you a cup, she said, gesturing to the mug across from her. We should talk. I nodded, taking the seat opposite her. I'm listening. I couldn't sleep last night, she began. I kept thinking about what you said, about me not letting go of Derek. At first I was just angry. It seemed so unfair, so extreme. But then I started really thinking about it, about how often I've brought him up, how I've been comparing you. She took a shaky breath. And you're right, I have all been doing that. Not because he was better or because I wish you were more like him, but because when things ended with Derek, I never got closure. He just disappeared. Moved to Portland for some artisanal furniture apprenticeship without even discussing it with me. I came home one day and half our apartment was empty. I hadn't known this detail about their breakup. It explained some things. So maybe, she continued, I've been trying to process that relationship through this one. Through you, which isn't fair to you at all. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Mike, really sorry. Her apology was sincere, I could tell. But was it enough? I appreciate that, I said carefully. And I'm sorry about how things ended with Derek. That must have been painful. It was, she acknowledged, but that doesn't excuse how I've treated you. You deserve better. She hesitated, then asked, Is it too late? Have I damaged us beyond repair? The question cut to the heart of everything. Had she? Had we crossed a point of no return? I don't know, I answered honestly. Trust is like a foundation. Once it's cracked, you can patch it, but the structure is never quite as solid. But you're a builder, she said, attempting a small smile. You fix foundations. I do, I agreed, but it takes time and commitment from both parties. I'm committed, she said firmly. If you're willing to try, I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, communication exercises, whatever you need. I don't want to lose you, Mike, or this house. Our house. I sipped my coffee, considering. About the house, I wasn't completely honest last night. I haven't actually accepted any offer. Jessica's eyes widened. What? But you said... I did receive an offer, I clarified. A good one, and I was seriously considering it, but I haven't signed anything. So the house isn't sold. Hope crept into her voice. Not yet, but Jessica, even if we keep the house, things need to change between us. Fundamentally change. They will, she promised. Starting now, no more comparisons, no more bringing up the past. I want to focus on our future, the one we're building together. I wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. How do I know this isn't just panic talking? The fear of losing the house and having to start over? Jessica reached across the island and took my hand. Because I realized something else last night. When I pictured my life without you, it wasn't the house I couldn't bear to lose. It was you, your steadiness, your integrity, the way you put everything you have into what you do. She squeezed my fingers. Derek might have built flashy projects that fell apart in a year. You build things that last, including us, I hope. It wasn't an instant fix. Trust, once damaged, does take time to rebuild. But her words resonated with something in me that wanted to believe in us. I need you to understand something, I said. I'm never going to be the spontaneous, fly by the seat of my pants guy. That's not who I am. I know, she said, and it's not who I need you to be. I think I was holding on to this idealized version of creativity and spontaneity because it was easier than admitting Derek was actually irresponsible and unreliable. She gave a rueful smile. The deck he built? It collapsed during a party 6 months later. I never posted those pictures. Despite everything, I chuckled. That doesn't surprise me. Those supports were questionable at best. See, that's what I need. Someone who knows what they're doing. She took a deep breath. So where do we go from here? It was a fair question. Where did we go? Part of me wanted to forgive everything immediately and move forward. Another part remained cautious, protective. How about this, I suggested. We table the discussion about selling the house for now. No decisions either way for 30 days. During that time, we focus on rebuilding our foundation. Maybe with some professional help. Couples counseling, she asked. I nodded. It couldn't hurt. And during this period, we both need to be completely honest with each other. No holding back to spare feelings. No passive-aggressive comments, just truth. I can do that, Jessica said firmly. Truth, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Omid. I amended. Especially when it's hard, she agreed. We spent that Sunday together, not working on the house for once, but walking through our neighborhood, talking more openly than we had in months. Jessica shared more details about her relationship with Derek, the good, the bad, the abandoned, and the reason she believed she'd been idealizing parts of it. I talked about my own insecurities, my fear of not being enough. You know what's ironic? She said as we walked back toward our house in the golden late afternoon light. All those times I mentioned Derek's projects, I was actually trying to contribute something to the renovation. I felt like you had all this knowledge and skill, and I had nothing to offer except memories of things I'd seen before. You have plenty to offer, I told her. Your design sense, your color choices, those have made the house special. I would have made everything beige and called it a day. She laughed. We make a good team when we're not getting in our own way. Looking at our house as we approached, the fresh paint, the new windows, the carefully landscaped front yard, I had to agree. Together, we'd created something beautiful. Maybe we could do the same with our relationship. The next month wasn't easy. We started couples counseling, which excavated issues beyond just the Derek comparisons. We argued, we apologized, we struggled to communicate in new ways. There were nights when I wondered if it would be simpler to just sell the house and move on separately. But there were also breakthroughs, moments of connection that felt deeper than before. A new honesty between us that, while sometimes painful, felt cleansing. Jessica kept her word about the comparisons. Not once during those 30 days did she mention Derek or imply that I should be more like him. Instead, she focused on appreciating my approach to problems, my attention to detail, my commitment to quality. When the 30 days were up, we sat together on our deck, the deck I'd built with such care, and faced the decision we'd postponed. So, Jessica said, looking out at the sunset, the house, what are we thinking? I took her hand. I'm thinking I don't want to sell it. I'm thinking it's our home, and we've put too much into it, both the structure and us, to walk away now. Relief washed over her face. Really? You want to stay? I do, I said, but I have a proposal. Let's make it official. Both our names on the deed, equal partners. Jessica's eyes widened. Are you sure? You've put so much more money into it than I have. It's not about the money, I said. It's about commitment to the house and to each other. Tears filled her eyes, but they were different from the desperate tear of a month ago. These were tears of gratitude. Yes, she said, leaning in to kiss me. Equal partners in everything. 2 weeks later, we signed the paperwork making Jessica co-owner of the house. That evening, we had a much smaller, more intimate gathering than our previous housewarming. Just a few close friends to celebrate. As we gave a tour of the renovations, I noticed something had shifted. When our friends complimented a feature, Jessica didn't mention inspirations or comparisons. Instead, she'd say things like, "That was Mike's design. He has an incredible eye for proportion." Or we decided on this together. Mike's expertise and my color obsession make a good combination. Later, when everyone had gone and we were cleaning up, I mentioned the change. I noticed you giving me credit tonight, I said casually. Thank you for that. Jessica set down the wine glass she was washing and turned to face me. I wasn't just giving you credit to make you feel good, Mike. I was stating facts. You are talented. You do have an eye for proportion. And I'm lucky to have a partner who can turn visions into reality. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. We're both lucky. It turns out we make a pretty good team. The best, she agreed. Building a house, building a life. No ghosts allowed.